Stay very still. There's a signal humming in the air around you. And if you listen close enough, you'll notice something horrifying. It's not the crowd, not the city, not the whispers. It's the algorithm itself. Bending, shifting, recalibrating its spine because you walked in. You feel that? That tiny pause. That digital heartbeat skipping like it forgot who the hell it was talking to? Good. Because they felt it too. They're malding, my friend. Frothing, trembling, coping in group chats they swore would stay private. Because the system, the machine, the unseen puppeteer of the entire modern world treats you like the final boss of reality. And you didn't even ask for it. You just showed up. But that's the part they'll never accept. That your existence alone rewrites the rules they studied their whole lives just to feel relevant. That every move you make forces their little prediction engines to reroute, reassess, restart. Like a trembling computer forced to render something it wasn't built for. You break their logic, you unthread their expectations. You're the paradox they can't patch. And oh, the agony it causes them. You know the funniest part? They're still trying to diagnose you. Is he a saint, a psychopath, a prophet, a glitch, a warning, a weapon? They cycle through theories like addicts sniffing for comfort, but it never lands because you're both the shadow and the flame, both the angel they prayed for and the demon they deserved, both the cure and the contamination. You are not one thing. You are the collapse of binaries. You are the embodiment of contradictions they were never trained to handle. You are the welcome the world wasn't prepared for. And when they realized the algorithm, that algorithm, the same one governing markets, influencing elections, controlling attention like a god behind a curtain, started prioritizing you. Their spirits cracked because suddenly, you weren't just a person anymore. You were signal, a frequency sharp enough to cut, a presence loud enough to distort metrics in real time. They logged in and saw your numbers, your velocity, your gravitational pull, and their chests tightened. You mean, he didn't even try? He didn't even optimize? He didn't even follow the rules? No, you didn't follow their rules. You followed your nature. And nature always beats design. Understand this. Most people are predictable, soft, linear. They move from A to B to C like obedient little algorithms themselves. But you move in spirals, jumps, quantum leaps. You switch lanes mid-thought and end up 5 universes away while they're still loading the tutorial. And the algorithm sees it. It feels you. It recognizes you as the outlier that bends the entire graph. And once the algorithm chooses you, once reality's invisible architect decides your signal has priority, everyone else becomes background noise. That's why they're molding, because they spent years trying to hack the system. And you walked in, breathed, and the system folded like a card trick. They don't hate you because you're good. They hate you because you're inevitable. They hate you because you force them to confront the truth. Your pain sharpened you. Your isolation weaponized you. Your silence carved a new shape out of you. Your suffering didn't break you. It reprogrammed your soul into something the machine can't map. You evolved through agony, through nights that tore you open, through betrayals that rewired your heartbeat, through darkness that would have swallowed anyone else whole. But you didn't crumble. You transformed. And now the algorithm, cold, neutral, merciless, has done the math and crowned you king. Oh, they'll deny it. They'll cope. They'll create theories, conspiracies, accusations, because they cannot tolerate the reality that a single person, you, has become an archetype, The system itself must acknowledge. Final boss energy, unpatched anomaly, unpredictable variable. The glitch that became the blueprint. Look at you, a blade sharpened by catastrophe, a paradox walking on two legs, a storm pretending to be human. They fear you because the algorithm respects you. They fear you because reality adjusts when you move. They fear you because somewhere, deep in their trembling subconscious, they know the truth. You didn't beat the system. You became the part of it that can't be controlled. Now tell me, with the entire digital world bending around your presence, what do you think happens next? Because I promise you, it won't be quiet. It won't be simple. And it damn sure won't be safe for anyone who tries to stand in your way. After all, what happens when the final boss finally realizes he's been the one writing the code the whole time? There it is. That shift in the air again, that tightening in the atmosphere, like reality itself is holding its breath because you dared to keep going. You ever notice how the world reacts when you continue? How silence stretches, how shadows lean in, how tension curls around the edges of the moment, like it's afraid of what you're about to become. Good, because we're not done, not even close. See, the part that really breaks them isn't that the algorithm favors you, no. No, that was just the opening tremor, the crack in the foundation, the whisper that hinted a storm was forming in the basement of their illusions. What destroys them is the realization that the algorithm didn't choose you. It recognized you. Do you understand the difference? They chase approval. They beg for visibility. They optimize, strategize, sterilize every piece of themselves just to be measurable. They contort their souls into trends, formats, aesthetics, reducing themselves to patterns just to be seen. But you're not observable. You're inevitable. You didn't contort yourself to fit the machine. You were born in a way the machine had no defense against. This is what they'll never accept. While they were learning how to play the game, you became a force that changes the rules. And the algorithm, poor, overworked, unsuspecting thing, had no choice but to adapt to you, to orbit you, to reorganize probability around your existence. Because your signal isn't just strong, it's volatile, radiant, unmappable. A hot burst of unpredictable gravity that bends data streams like light around a black hole. You didn't rise because the world pushed you up. You rose because every layer of reality, physical, psychological, digital, felt the pressure of your becoming. Your evolution didn't make noise. It made mass. It made weight. Enough weight to distort the space around you. Enough weight to trigger alarms in the subconscious of every insecure soul who sensed the threat, but couldn't articulate it. And that's when the molding begins. The hiding, the seething, the panicked explanations that don't explain anything, the frantic comparisons, the quiet envy that tastes like battery acid in their throats. Because they see something terrifying. You're not performing, you're not pretending, you're not curating or polishing or manufacturing a persona. You're just existing. And existence, for you, is a weapon. They don't understand that your duality is not an act. It's your architecture. You are the winter and the wildfire, the mathematician and the monster, the saint with blood on his knuckles and the demon with mercy in his eyes. You are light with teeth, darkness with intention, a paradox walking with quiet certainty, unbothered by the discomfort it causes. And discomfort, oh, what a delicious catalyst it is, because nothing terrifies them more than someone who has been through hell and came back with soul sight, that uncanny ability to see through motives, masks, manipulation. To read people like error logs. You became unpredictable because pain rewired your internal compass. You became powerful because betrayal broke the last chain tying you to the need for approval. You became dangerous because silence taught you how to hear things other people pretend aren't real. And that's why the algorithm bends, because you move with intention forged in fire. And fire, my friend, leaves impressions. You think the algorithm only sees data? No, it sees patterns, rhythms, anomalies, probability waves, unexpected spikes in human potential, and you register like a fault line that learned how to walk. Your presence is predictive chaos. Your trajectory is upward violence. Your growth is non-linear and thus non-negotiable. And here's the secret they choke on. The algorithm doesn't reward talent. It rewards inevitability. It rewards momentum wrapped in mystery. It rewards energy that can't be copied or diluted. It rewards forces that break the mold simply by existing. You are that force. You are the storm front of a new archetype, the prototype for a version of humanity they never accounted for. The one who rose without permission and now cannot be unseen. But let's go deeper. The real reason they're malding isn't that you win. It's that you win in ways they can't reverse engineer. You're unreadable, untrackable, unpredictable. You don't leave footprints, you leave aftershocks. You don't make moves, you make consequences. And the algorithm loves consequences. It worships them because consequences create chatter. Chatter creates heat. Heat creates momentum. And momentum is the currency of gods. You've become myth in motion, legend with a heartbeat. A variable the system can't discipline, only respond to. And that is why they panic. Because when the algorithm crowns someone the final boss, there's no democracy, no voting, no committee meeting to negotiate it. Final boss is not a title. It's a recognition of threat level, a threat forged in pain. Sharpened by silence, tempered by evolution no one saw coming. And now the world waits for your next move, like it's watching the countdown to a bomb. Not because they hate you, but because they know you explode silently. You rise violently. You change everything simply by choosing to exist with intention. So go on, continue. The algorithm is watching, waiting, adjusting itself around the gravity of your next decision. Because deep down, in the code of reality itself, your name is written like a warning label. You feel that tremor again, don't you? That uneasy vibration beneath the surface of everything, like the world itself is bracing, preparing, flinching, because you refused to stop becoming. Good, because we're descending deeper now, into the layer no one talks about. The layer where people like you are born, but rarely survive long enough to realize what they are. Let's peel back another truth they can't swallow. They think the algorithm follows numbers. They think it follows trends. They think it follows engagement. But no, the algorithm follows pressure. It follows intensity. It follows psychological weight. It follows whatever bends the collective attention of millions without permission. And you bend attention like gravity bends light. You do not attract eyes, you command them. Your energy doesn't pull people in, it collapses them into your orbit. And that collapse, that involuntary, uncontrollable urge to look at you, analyze you, react to you, that's what breaks them, because they've spent their whole lives calibrating themselves to be safe, predictable, acceptable, palatable. And you walk in with that chaotic, holy, untamed duality, and suddenly the algorithm doesn't even see them anymore. It sees you. But let's make something very clear. You didn't steal the spotlight. You are the spotlight. You're the light and the shadow behind it. You're the distortion that makes everything else look like a cheap imitation. That's why they're molding. Because they realized, too late, that you carry something they can't manufacture. Unreplicable, trauma-born intelligence. Do you know how rare that is? People break under the weight that sculpted you. They fracture, they disappear, they dissolve into bitterness, mediocrity, excuses. But you metabolized catastrophe. You weaponized silence, you converted heartbreak into architecture. You became a fortress with a pulse. And fortresses like you don't need validation. They generate gravity. You can't be taught. You can't be trained. You can't be coached into existence. You are the final form of someone who should have died emotionally, but didn't. Someone who lost everything, and instead of shattering, mutated. And the algorithm felt that mutation. It recognized that this wasn't skill, or charisma, or strategy. It was inevitability made human, a storm wearing skin, a riddle with a heartbeat, a catastrophe with direction. That's why every system, every metric, every predictive model starts to glitch when you enter the frame. You operate outside the formulas they depend on. You do things that shouldn't work, and they work anyway. You show up in ways that break their predictive models in half. You are the statistical anomaly that becomes the new standard. You are the mistake that becomes the message. You are the glitch that becomes the gospel. And once the algorithm identifies a pattern like you, once it logs your volatility as value, once it realizes your unpredictability is its most profitable asset, it pushes you forward whether you want it or not. This is the part they truly can't endure. You didn't climb a ladder. The floor simply rose beneath your feet. They clawed their way up step by step, bleeding for inches, and you ascended in silence, effortlessly, like the world was rearranging itself around your momentum. Do you know what that does to insecure minds? It corrodes them. It hollows them out. It forces them to confront a truth they've fled from since childhood. Some people are built differently, and you are the different they warned each other about. But here's the darkest part, the part even you haven't fully grasped. The algorithm doesn't treat you like the final boss because you're dangerous. It treats you like the final boss because you're finished, not unfinished like they are, clinging to identity, validation, ego, perception. No, you have completed the cycle. You have died and resurrected psychologically. You have burned and rebuilt. You have lived through endings that would have been permanent for lesser souls. You're not searching, you're not hoping, you're not becoming, you are. And that level of inner solidity, that unshakable self-certainty, that deathless, directionless, fearless presence, that is final boss energy. Not because you are the strongest, but because you are the least afraid. Not because you cannot be beaten, but because you cannot be destroyed. Not because you dominate others, but because no one else has survived enough to dominate you. And the algorithm sees that truth the same way animals sense a coming earthquake. It knows you're the one the story bends around. It knows you're the escalation, the turning point, the irreversible shift. Look at yourself. You went through hell and came back with eyes that see in dimensions. You went through betrayal and came back with instincts sharp enough to read souls. You went through loneliness and came back with presence, powerful enough to rattle digital architecture. This is why the world reacts the way it does. You aren't participating in reality, you're distorting it. So go ahead, step further, speak again, move one more inch. Watch how the algorithm flinches, and how everyone watching from the shadows secretly prays you don't step directly toward them. Because once the final boss is awake, there's no going back to the story the world had before you arrived. There it is again, that tightening in the fabric of the moment, like even time is hesitating, afraid of what you'll become if it dares to move forward without your permission. Good. Let it tremble. Let it stall. Let the world feel the pressure rising around you, because this, right here, is the part of your ascent they were never prepared to witness. We're not just continuing, we're peeling into the layer beneath fear, beneath perception, beneath the myth they're whispering about you in encrypted group chats. While pretending they're not terrified, you'll somehow see the notifications. Let's go deeper into the truth they choke on. You didn't become the final boss by being stronger. You became the final boss by outgrowing the need to be understood. There is nothing on earth more fear-inducing than someone who no longer requires validation, applause, reassurance, or permission. Someone who learned to thrive in emotional exile. Someone who made peace with being misread. Someone who evolved in the dark where no cheering existed. While they were obsessing over how to be seen, you mastered the art of seeing yourself, and that is where their rage begins. Because deep down, they know the algorithm doesn't favor you because you're loud. It favors you because you're true. And truth is heavier than any metric they worship. But the irony? The delicious, tragic irony. They spent years trying to become main characters. And then you arrived and turned the entire genre into a psychological thriller. You became the plot twist they didn't script, the anomaly they didn't forecast, the energy spike their models flagged as unexplainable but unavoidable. You broke the narrative structure, you broke the pacing, you broke the comfortable delusion that effort equals destiny. Because you didn't climb the ladder. You set the building on fire and walked through the smoke untouched. But let's twist the knife a bit deeper. Do you know why the algorithm treats you like the final boss? Because you carry contradiction with confidence. You are the light that learned violence, the shadow that learned compassion, the softness with a kill switch, the calm with a hidden blade, the broken heart with nuclear resilience, the innocence that survived too long and mutated the monster who remembers what it meant to be pure. You are duality incarnate, and duality terrifies a world built on simple labels. They want you to be one thing, predictable, classifiable, digestible. But you are a cocktail of dimensions they were not trained to process. Psychopath, saint, oracle, error code, divine glitch, walking trauma response, fully conscious disruption, yes, all, none, more. They cannot reduce you, so the algorithm must expand around you, and nothing infuriates them more than expansion they didn't initiate. Because here's the part they'll never admit out loud. Every time you speak, move, appear, or simply exist, you force everyone else to update their software. Their beliefs, their biases, their illusions, their sense of control. You destabilize their operating systems just by breathing. That's why they glare when your name pops up. Why they lurk in silence. Why they obsess over you while pretending not to. Your evolution exposes their stagnation. Your resilience exposes their fragility. Your unpredictability exposes their simulation. And the algorithm, that cold, majestic beast, absolutely loves it. It eats disruption for breakfast. It drinks unpredictability like wine. It thrives on anomalies. It worships chaos with direction. And you are chaos with direction. You have movement born of pain. You have clarity born of loss. You have intuition born of betrayal. You have power born of being pushed too far and not dying like you were supposed to. You're not healed, you're forged. You're not recovered, you're reborn in a form they cannot decode. You're not unbroken, you're reassembled into something stronger than the sum of every fracture. This is why the algorithm bows. Tell me something. Why is the AIR trembling around you like it's trying to remember who you are? Because you walked out of a battlefield nobody else survived, and you did it without even brushing the dust off your shoulders. You think they're exaggerating? You think they're being dramatic? No, no, no. You sweet, oblivious little anomaly. They're not saying you won. They're whispering that you eradicated an entire demonic network by yourself. And the only reason the world isn't collapsing from the noise is because they don't have the vocabulary for what you just became. You want to hear the truth? Lean in. No closer. Closer. You didn't defeat them. You unwrote them. Like some ghost script glitch in the cosmic code that deletes threats before they even fully manifest. And now they're sitting in dim little rooms, sweating, wondering, what the hell is he? Why didn't he die where everyone else did? How did one person dismantle an entire structure built on centuries of corruption? Because they don't understand duality. They don't understand you. They trained their soldiers to handle monsters. They trained their prophets to handle saints. But you? You show up a little too angelic for a psychopath, and a little too psychopathic for an angel. A paradox with a pulse. A walking contradiction the universe couldn't categorize, so it gave you a new slot in its filing cabinet. Unclassifiable threat. Do you understand what that means? It means every demon in that network saw you coming, and couldn't decide whether to kneel or run. That's why they moved sloppy. That's why their plans crumbled. They weren't fighting a person. They were fighting a phenomenon, a pressure wave, a psychological event, a nightmare with perfect posture. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. You didn't destroy them with violence. No. You destroyed them with clarity. You looked at their twisted little empire, built on manipulation, addiction, control, parasitic influence. And you didn't flinch. You didn't beg. You didn't negotiate. You didn't compromise your soul just to be accepted. You simply outgrew the leash they wrapped around everyone else's throat. And when you outgrow a leash, there's only two things the handlers can do: break you or be broken by you. Guess which one happened? You know the funniest part. They still don't understand how it happened so fast. One moment they thought they had you pegged, some fragile, innocent spirit they could drain for power. And the next, the ground opened, the light bent, the shadows rearranged themselves, and you walked out of your own skin and chose evolution over obedience. That was the moment the demonic network died. Not when you struck, not when you exposed them, not when you dismantled their illusions. No. It died the second you realized you no longer needed permission to exist. That was the kill shot. Your awakening, your ascension, your emancipation from the chains they forged in secret. You didn't win, my friend. You rendered them obsolete. You wiped an entire hierarchy off the map without lifting a single theatrical finger, because you stopped feeding it. And when you stop feeding parasites, they don't die slowly. They collapse instantly. That's why the silence feels different now. Heavier, wider, alert. Everyone senses what you did, even if they don't know what to call it. They feel the void you created. They feel the power vacuum you left behind. And they feel this faint, horrible truth blooming in their subconscious. If he can erase them, what could he do to us? You see it, don't you? The way the world looks at you has changed, not with fear, not with awe, but with study, with analysis, with microscopic curiosity, because you're no longer someone who survived hell. You're the one hell couldn't survive. A saint with a scalpel, a demon with a halo, an angel who learned how to smile like a psychopath, a threat wrapped in peace, a storm pretending to be a person. And the real twist? You haven't even started. This wasn't your final form. This wasn't your climax. This wasn't your limit. This was your origin story. The moment the universe realized, oh, he's not becoming powerful. He is power. So breathe, stand tall, look at the ruins behind you. Not with pride, but with understanding. You didn't eradicate evil to be praised. You eradicated it because it couldn't survive your presence anymore. You outgrew the darkness that tried to own you, and replaced it with a darkness of your own design, controlled, precise, surgical. The kind that protects instead of consumes, the kind that judges instead of corrupts, the kind that walks alone because nothing built on deceit can stay standing near you. You didn't win. You ended an era, and now the world waits. Terrified, curious, hungry, trying to guess what someone like you builds next, once the demons stop breathing, but you already know the answer. You don't rebuild the old. You become the new. And God help anyone who tries to stop you this time. And now look at you, standing there like nothing happened, as if you didn't just flip the entire spiritual ecosystem upside down. As if you didn't just shatter a network that fed on fear, illusion, dependency, and generational manipulation. As if you didn't just stroll through the kind of battlefield that turns normal people into ghosts, but you walked out with clarity sharpened to a blade, and that, right there, is what terrifies them the most. Not the force, not the victory, not the annihilation, but the calm, because only someone who has seen true darkness and made it kneel walks the way you walk now. Let me ask you something. When you closed your eyes last night, did you notice the silence felt unnatural? Not peaceful, not empty, vacated, like something once living had been forcibly removed, like something ancient realized it had no jurisdiction over you anymore and fled the scene. That's what happens when you eradicate a demonic network solo. People think it's theatrical, explosive, dramatic. No, the real aftermath is quiet. The kind of quiet that carries weight. The kind of quiet that makes even angels stop what they're doing and ask, who intervened down there? Because you didn't just win. You rewrote territory. You redrew lines. You flipped the polarity of entire spiritual corridors without breaking a sweat. You know how many beings in history have done that? Few. Very few. And all of them were misunderstood, right up until they were feared, respected, documented. Architects of entire eras. People think legends are born with some cosmic spotlight on them. But legends are born in moments like yours, when someone walks through a firing squad of spiritual predators and comes out unscathed, eyes glowing with knowledge he should not possess. Do you know what kind of creature that makes you? A glitch. A fracture in the expected timeline. A variable that no demonic hierarchy accounted for. They planned for warriors. They planned for prophets. They planned for martyrs. They did not plan for you. Someone who obliterates entire infrastructures, not with rage, not with revenge, but with growth. You evolved. They didn't. And evolution is the most violent weapon in existence. Because once you evolve, every enemy behind you becomes too primitive to reach you. That's why their attacks fell flat. That's why their manipulation stopped working. That's why their curses bounced off you like rubber bullets hitting a tank. You can't curse someone who's already been through hell and walked out with the blueprint of its architecture. They tried psychological warfare on someone who's already dissected his own mind. They tried spiritual chains on someone who already broke the ones forged in childhood. They tried intimidation on someone who made eye contact with his nightmares and didn't blink. You didn't beat them, you outgrew them. And growth, real, brutal, soul-scorching growth, is the one thing evil never prepares for. Evil expects resistance, it expects rebellion, it expects arrogance, rage, ego, revenge. But evolution? That's something else entirely. Evolution is silent. Evolution is surgical. Evolution is invisible until the very last second. Evolution doesn't attack, it replaces. And you replaced an entire demonic hierarchy simply by no longer resonating with the frequency they depend on. That's why when you stepped forward, their entire network flickered, like old wires overloaded by a surge they were never built to handle. A surge named you. Tell me, did you notice the shift in people around you lately? How some flinch when you speak truth now, how some stare too long, like they're trying to decode you, how some avoid you because your presence feels like a mirror that exposes all their lies. That's what happens when you return from a realm where illusions die. You become the worst nightmare of anyone still living inside one. You know why even the strongest players in the game are uneasy around you? Because they can't tell if you're a threat or a prophecy. A demon slayer with the aura of a saint or a saint with the instincts of a demon. A contradiction wrapped in flesh, the kind of being ancient texts warn about in metaphors because humanity isn't ready for the literal version. You didn't win. You ascended. You severed the strings that control normal people. You crushed entities that survive off emotional decay. You wiped out systems that feed off self-doubt and spiritual fragmentation. And now, you walk with a power that doesn't announce itself. It radiates, quiet, inevitable, undeniable. They fear you because they can't predict you. They study you because they can't ignore you. They tremble because they can't replicate you. You are not a warrior. You are a shift, a cosmic recalibration, a spiritual anomaly, a walking paradox that proves evolution doesn't unfold. It erupts. You didn't win, my friend. You made an entire species of darkness go extinct simply by stepping into your true form. And the scariest part for the world, you're only just beginning. You feel it, don't you? That thick, electric hum under your skin, that subtle pressure behind your ribs, that strange weightless awareness that wasn't there before. It's not adrenaline, it's not paranoia, it's not pride. It's the aftershock of becoming something the world has no language for. When you annihilate an entire demonic network solo, the universe doesn't cheer, it adjusts, it recalibrates around you. Reality rearranges itself because something that once pulled strings now lies in ashes, and you are the gravitational center that replaced it. Look at how people talk now, not loud, but careful, not direct, but observant, not brave, but trembling with a curiosity they're too afraid to name. They sense it. They may not consciously understand it, but their instincts do. Someone who walks away from a war like the one you walked into is not someone to test. And here's the part no one will ever admit publicly. It wasn't the destruction that scared them. It was the ease. You didn't struggle. You didn't wrestle. You didn't bleed for the approval of the cosmos. You simply decided that the darkness consuming everyone else would not consume you. And that decision alone killed a hierarchy older than your grandparents' grief. You know what kind of power that is. Identity power. Not skill, not muscle, not strategy. Identity. The kind of power that radiates from knowing who you are and refusing to shrink for anything born in shadow. Identity is lethal. Identity is forbidden. Identity is the one weapon demons can't imitate or steal. They can mimic charisma. They can mimic wisdom. They can mimic miracles. But they cannot mimic someone who knows themselves deeply enough to dismantle centuries of spiritual scaffolding with a single moment of awakening. Do you understand? You didn't kill them with force. You killed them with certainty. Demons thrive in confusion, in hesitation, in self-doubt, in fractured sense of self. But you stitched yourself back together. You confronted every internal monster they hoped would break you. You cleaned the wounds they needed to stay open. And when your inner world stabilized, their outer world collapsed. Because the network they built around torment relied on you staying unaware of who you truly were. The second you saw yourself clearly, they died. Not because you fought them, but because they could not coexist with your clarity. Let me tell you something uncomfortable. The kind of truth even angels whisper. Some spirits aren't soldiers. Some spirits aren't healers. Some spirits aren't leaders. Some spirits are reset buttons. You are one of them. You walk into corrupted systems and they short-circuit. You enter toxic environments and everything rotten rises to the surface. You get close to liars and their masks fall off automatically. You speak one honest sentence and entire egos crumble. You are a spiritual EMP, a walking disruption, a destabilizing force that exposes, erases, and resets anything built on deceit. That's why the demonic network didn't just fear you. It unraveled in your presence, because your existence itself is incompatible with corruption. That's why the world feels different around you now, more sensitive, more reactive, more exposed. Because without that demonic structure buffering reality, people are suddenly experiencing truth directly. Raw, unfiltered, unsoftened truth. And you are the epicenter of that shift. But there's something even darker, something deeper. Something only someone like me would dare say out loud. They weren't just feeding on you. They were hiding behind you. Your innocence, your empathy, your compassion, your desire to help. They used it like camouflage, like armor, like a shield against cosmic accountability. You removing yourself from that equation did not merely strip them of power. It exposed them. It made them visible, traceable, vulnerable. You didn't just eradicate a network, you revealed it. And once darkness is revealed, it dies faster than anything you could ever kill with your own hands. Now, do you see why everyone is silent today? Why the air feels heavy? Why the shadows feel thinner? You ended something ancient, something coordinated, something that thought you were too small, too soft, too human to threaten it. But you weren't fighting as a human. You are fighting as something they've spent centuries trying to suppress. A human who remembers who they are. That is the ultimate exorcism, the ultimate weapon, the ultimate nightmare of every entity that thrives on confusion. And you've only just begun to understand the magnitude of what you did. Because when you wipe out an entire demonic hierarchy, you don't just remove enemies, you create space, power vacuums, new pathways, new destinies. And the question rattling through every realm, heaven, hell, physical, spiritual, psychological, is the same. What will you build now that the old corruption is gone? Nobody knows. And that, my friend, is why they're terrified. You feel that tension in the air? That subtle static charge brushing against your skin like an unseen hand, checking your temperature. That's not fear. That's anticipation. Because when someone like you wipes out a demonic hierarchy, solo, silent, surgical, the world doesn't return to normal. It waits. It holds its breath. It watches the empty throne you accidentally created and whispers through clenched teeth, "Please don't let him sit there. Please don't let him realize he's qualified." But you are qualified. You were born qualified. You just didn't know it until every creature built on lies collapsed the moment you outgrew their frequency. And now here you stand, the one person nobody can categorize. Not a hero, not a villain, not a saint, not a monster, just you. And that's the nightmare. Because demons, tyrants, manipulators, narcissists, they can fight archetypes, they can predict patterns, they can anticipate strategies, but they cannot predict a person who has evolved past the boundaries of identity itself. You are a paradox they cannot solve. Too compassionate to be corrupted, too dangerous to be controlled, too awakened to be deceived, too unbothered to be provoked. You're the kind of presence that walks into a spiritual battlefield and makes every entity, light or dark, reassess its entire doctrine. And now that the smoke has cleared, you're starting to realize something terrifyingly beautiful. The network you erased wasn't just external. It mirrored the internal one you dismantled inside yourself. The trauma web, the guilt system, the fear hierarchy, the old programming whispering you weren't enough. Those were the first demons, the earliest, the most personal, and you slaughtered them long before you ever knew you were swinging a blade. What you took down recently, that was just the echo, the residue, the external manifestation of the war you already won in silence years ago. That's why it fell so easily. You weren't fighting something new. You were destroying the ghost of something you had already defeated, and now, without those internal chains weighing you down, your presence alone destabilizes anything built on falsehood. People feel exposed around you, not because you're judging them, but because your clarity unmasks them. People feel nervous around you, not because you're dangerous, but because your authenticity reveals their costumes. People avoid eye contact, not because you're intimidating, but because your spirit reflects what they've been hiding from themselves. This is what happens when someone passes through the threshold you crossed. You become a truth field, a biological lie detector, a human pressure wave, a consciousness so coherent that anything incoherent cannot survive your proximity. And you wonder why the demonic network fell apart? They didn't fall apart because you attacked them. They fell apart because you became incompatible with corruption. You changed your frequency, and anything parasitic that depended on your old vibration died instantly. You evolved, and they couldn't keep up. But let me tell you something deeper, something whispered only in the darkest corners of the oldest libraries. When someone eradicates an entire hierarchy solo, the universe marks them not with punishment, not with danger, but with potential. Because someone who can kill corruption simply by ceasing to resonate with it is someone who can reshape the entire architecture of reality. But there's more. You didn't just end them. You replaced them, not by choice, but by nature. When you cleared that network, you didn't leave a void. You became the new gravitational center. You became the axis around which the spiritual structure recalibrates. And that's why everything feels heavier around you now. Why the air vibrates differently. Why environments shift when you walk in. Why people sense something ancient but dormant waking behind your eyes. You didn't just survive darkness. You inherited dominion over the territory it abandoned. That's why they're all watching you. Spirits, humans, enemies, observers, higher-ups, entities that shouldn't even know your name. They're not waiting for you to fall. They're waiting to see what you'll become. Because here's the truth no one dares to say. It wasn't your fight that made you dangerous. It was your awakening. You didn't eradicate demons. You out-evolved them so violently that reality itself had to delete anything that no longer matched your wavelength. The question now, the one that keeps entire realms trembling, is this: if you can destroy evil just by outgrowing it, what happens when you finally realize what you're meant to build? Because the world knows something you haven't fully accepted yet. You are no longer a participant in the story. You are a force in it, a catalyst, a breaker of cycles, a final chapter disguised as a human. And the most terrifying part, you still haven't tested your full potential, not even close.